Ghazali's influence on Tasawwuf, and this was his greatest achievement. Of all of these achievements, this was the most enduring achievement of Ghazali, that he reunited the outward practice of Islam and the interior life of a Muslim so completely that they would never be separated again, despite all the attempts in modern times, that they would never be separated again. Now, was Ghazali a progenitor of philosophy, of Tasawwuf? No. Tasawwuf was present from the very first. The most famous statement of Tasawwuf is what? وَاعْبُدُ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. Yeah? Worship your Lord as though you see Him. That was a great prophetic statement. That's the basis of Tasawwuf. Worship your Lord as though you see Him. الْإِحْسَانُ أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ وَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. Right? Ihsan, perfection of faith, beauty of faith, is to worship your Lord as though you are seeing Him. And if you cannot do this, then be convinced that He is seeing you. Be experientially convinced that He is seeing you. That is the Islam of the Salaf. Ghazali was a Salafi. He was a Salafi. He harked back. Ghazali, as I said in previous class about Malik, Malik did not see himself as the beginning of something. Malik saw himself as the end. Malik saw himself as the end of the Medinan tradition. The end of the Medinan tradition. There is after me, no one else holds the Medinan tradition. The school of Medina, I will preserve it for the generations to come on. Ghazali was with all this stuff that we say about him, but he was backwards looking. Ghazali harked back to a simpler age, to a better time. Why can't we be Muslims like they were Muslim? That was his basic in the Ihya. This is his complaint. Why can't we be Muslim like they were Muslim? We've lost what it means to be Muslim. We've lost what it means to be true believers. We think it's all about fiqh. And as long as I've got it in place with the fiqh, then I'm okay, I'm a good Muslim. No. Where is our inward state? Where is our state with God? It's all very well, oh, my prayer is perfect because I bow in exactly the right angle. And my feet are exactly the right distance apart. And my pronunciation is perfect. But my heart is with my business. But I've done a perfect prayer. Ghazali says you haven't done a perfect prayer. Ghazali says if your heart is not present, you are not present. If you are not present, what kind of a prayer is it? Okay? Ghazali harked back to the time of Abu Darda, to Ali, to the piety of the earliest Muslims. And Ghazali himself was part of a tradition. The spiritual path, again another 3-minute history, the spiritual path was formalized in really the 2nd and the 3rd centuries, right? Or first to 3rd centuries. Hassan al-Basri to Junaid, Rabi al-Basri to Bayazid Bistami, the great, the two basic, if you like, the two great flavors of tasawwuf, of divine experience, which is what? Which is sober and intoxicated. Okay? Sober tasawwuf and intoxicated tasawwuf. Right? Intoxicated tasawwuf is, I'm in love and I want everyone to know it. That's intoxicated tasawwuf. And sober tasawwuf was, I'm in love but I want to keep it to myself. And that was the difference between Junaid and Bayazid, for example. Okay? But these were formalized at that period. The great early works of Tasawwuf were written in the 4th century. Al-Muhasibi's works, the Kashf al-Mahjub of Imam of Data Ganj Baksh, who's buried in the great saint of Lahore, the Risala of Imam al-Khushairi, the Qut al-Qulub of Abu Talib al-Makki. These works were all written. And they were written before Ghazali was born, and they influenced Ghazali greatly. So even the idea of a Shaykh and a Murid, that you are Murid of a Shaykh, this didn't come after Ghazali. This came before Ghazali. Okay? Imam al-Qushayri, Abu Qasim al-Qushayri talks about being a murid of a Shaykh, taking bay'ah with a Shaykh. All these things were there. Okay? But they were seen as one of two things. They were seen as the activity of an elite group of righteous people. It's the elite, those who have mastered fiqh and so forth, they are the ones who need to concern themselves with their inward state. Once you figure out how not to sin, then you can concern yourself with whether you have a problem of anger or of jealousy or something like that. Or they were seen as hippies, basically. Weirdos who do these weird things, they jump around. Like someone came to Ahmad bin Hanbal. He says, what do you think about the Sufis? And Ahmad bin Hanbal said, they are the best of the people that I know. And he says, but they enter spiritual states and listen to music. He said, would you deny them an hour of pleasure with their Lord? Yeah? So people saw them as these people are strange people. They do these weird things we don't know about. This is one of the reasons that Tasawwuf was so popular in the hinterlands. Yeah? Because Khaja Mu'ayyid Chishti goes along to India and they're singing bhajans. And he says, okay, cool, we'll sing some bhajans too. We'll also sing bhajans. And we'll call it qawali. Right? But those bhajans will be about Allah. Will be about the Prophet ﷺ. If you like singing, we'll sing. Yeah? And so forth. This is how it happened. Yeah? There was Shaykh Babikr told us this, that there was a scholar and a Sufi, and he was in Africa. He was in the inside, in one of the tribes, and he says the people would gather around the fire, a campfire, and they would beat on drums, and they would start dancing, and they would call on their ancestors. He said, "Cool. Let's start a fire. We'll beat the drums, and we'll call upon Allah, or we'll call upon the Prophet ﷺ." And people said, "Oh, you can't do this, and this is bid'ah," and he says, "Yes, but how else do you bring these people? What will you say to them?" Shaykh Babikr said something lovely once. He says, so there are, in Africa, Christians don't tend to convert to Islam, and Muslims don't tend to convert to Christianity. What you get is pagans. There are a lot of people who still follow African traditional religions, pagan, animistic religions. They convert to either Christianity or to Islam. When the Christian guy comes to them, he says, "Come, become a Christian." They say, "Why?" He says, "Jesus, he was God on earth. He was the Son of God. He walked on water. He raised the dead." And they go, "Hey, that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool." Then the Muslim guy comes, right? Straight from the University of Medina. The Muslim guy comes and says, "You must convert to Islam. La ilaha illallah. Muhammad Rasulullah." And he says, "Oh, why?" And he says, "And who was Muhammad?" He says, "He was just a guy. He was just a guy. He came with a message. He's dead now." Which one do you think they're going to pick? Which one would you pick? Superman or Postman? That's the choice you're being offered. He says, No, Baba. The Prophet ﷺ, man, if you start telling people about the day of judgment, the Prophet ﷺ will stand in front of hellfire. When hellfire is coming towards you, yeah, it's coming towards the people. It's being held by 70,000 chains. Each chain being held by 70,000 angels, all of them trying to pull hellfire back, and hellfire is still advancing. And the sound that comes out of hellfire is the most awful sound, the shrieking, the most awful, terrifying sound that anyone has ever heard. And it's saying, "I'm hungry, I'm hungry." And it's not backing off, it's just getting closer and closer and closer. And then the Prophet ﷺ stands in front of hellfire and says, "Go back." And it goes back. You tell someone that's who the Prophet ﷺ is. That's who the Prophet ﷺ is. And the reality of the Prophet ﷺ, we know it. But few of us have experienced it. And few of us have experienced it. We know these things because they're in the hadith. They're in the works. Yeah? But this is what, when you say make the Prophet ﷺ, that he is alive, but you make him alive in your heart. So you have a living relationship with the Prophet ﷺ. So when you hear a hadith, and I say this, when we do, winter, spring and stuff, but you bring your heart to this thing, to these things. Yeah, that when you are falling into hellfire, and the hand that comes to catch you is the hand of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, come with me. And he takes you away from all the fear and the darkness and the terror and the pain, and gives you a drink that makes every suffering you've had in your life and in your afterlife disappear. That's the Prophet ﷺ. And that's what it means to have an interior life. This is about having an interior life. That your religion is not just a coat you put on when you're going outside, but it's your flesh and your blood and your bone and your marrow. Okay? So Ghazali took from these figures. Yeah? His own great teacher, Juwaini, was a good friend of Qushayri himself. One of Qushayri's main students, Al-Faramdi, was basically Ghazali's Shaykh, his murshid. Okay? But the effect of Ghazali, the effect of such a great scholar, embracing Tasawwuf and he says this, it's the only way to come to the truth. And you'll see this next week when you do the Munqidh. Inshallah, we'll go back to Ghazali's own works next week. You'll see he says this. I have looked into every group that claims to have the truth, and none of them have it, except the Sufis. None of them have it except the Sufis. And one of the reasons, he said, and Shaykh Hamza Yusuf made this point, it's a very beautiful point. He says, Ghazali's method, his approach, is a very modern method. He says, because the way of the Sufi, that the Sufis have attained the truth, is known by experience. You can experience it. You don't have to take anyone else's word for it. If you do what they tell you to do, if you act in the way that they tell you to act, if you do those the acts of worship as you're supposed to do them and so forth, if you purify your soul, the way they tell you to purify your soul, you will experience what they experience. You don't have to take anyone's word for it. You just got to have the courage to do it. There ain't no difference between you and that Wali Allah, except he's done it, you haven't. He's at the end of the road and you're at the beginning. And you're thinking, should I take a step? Should I take a step? Ghazali, you'll see next week, himself said this. I sat there thinking, shall I take the step? Shall I take the step? Shall I not take the step? I can see the road. It looks like a cool road. It's going to be hard. Yeah? Until Allah basically came behind him and went, go. The angel of death appeared behind him. He said, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going now. Alright? Okay? But the effect of such a great scholar who had been through this, embracing Tasawwuf as the only way to attain the divine truth, was incredibly powerful. It was an incredibly powerful thing. And it played a significant role in the widespread acceptance of Tasawwuf. Tasawwuf was there, it existed, but in the widespread acceptance of Tasawwuf. And in the notion, that the Ihya did this more than anything else, that Tasawwuf, it ain't something for the elite. It's something for you. I remember once I asked, when we first started teaching PTS, I asked Dr. Sheikh Samir Nas, I said, should we teach things like anger and jealousy? And he said, because other places, they don't teach this stuff. He said, look, I said, is it Fard Ain? I said, Ghazali said it's Fard Ain. Sheikh Samir said, oh, you see, if you never get angry, then it's not Fard Ain for you. If you never experience jealousy, then you don't have to study it. So, hands up, you've never got angry. Hands up, you've never experienced jealousy or greed or anything like that. Oh, Baba, it's Fard Ain for you. And this is what Ghazali said. This is what Ghazali said. Okay, and this was the great achievement, this great synthesis, joining the outward and the inward aspects of Islam. And it's for that reason that people said about it, not just one, several people. Safariyin, he said about it. Imam As-Safadi said about it, I should say. Nawawi said, others said as well, if all the works of Islam were to be lost and only the Ihya remained, it would suffice to revive the religion. And that's a big claim to make on behalf of somebody else's work. Nawawi didn't say that about any of his own works. He didn't say it about Riyadh al-Salihin. He didn't say it about other works that he wrote. He said it about the Ihya. Why? Why is it sufficient to revive the religion? because it combines the outward aspects of Islam, the actual fiqh, the practice, how to pray and so forth, but combined with their inward aspects, how your body prays to God and how your heart prays to God, how you fast physically and how you fast spiritually, and he combined them together. May Allah make it easy for us. It's a very sort of academic, I suppose, lesson this week. Next week, inshallah, we will we'll be going back to Ghazali's own work. We'll be looking at the Munqidh min ad-Dalal. Those of you who have this work, Deliverance from Error, if you have it, you have it. You can read the first half of Deliverance from Error, up until the discussion of the ways of the Sufis, basically. Okay, and you'll have an idea. We obviously won't be reading the work; it's a long work, longish, but I'll summarize it down for you, inshallah. Okay, and we'll be discussing next week quite a lot of different aspects of the looking at, especially Ghazali's engagement with philosophy, and directly how that relates to our circumstances. Okay, how it relates. It's very similar to what we experience now, where now science is the new philosophy. If science says it's right, then it's right. Okay? And actually, our approach to science needs to be exactly the same as Ghazali's approach to philosophy, which is you need to be well grounded in your religion, and you then need to tread carefully, accept the aspects that are positive, and reject those that are not. Okay? Inshallah, we'll look at it next week. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.